Like I literally just got home.
What was that?
I'll tell you later.
Okay. Yeah, I just started the recording. I'll call him.
Gary's not going to be joining us.
No, he got another schedule conflict came up after he had agreed to this time. So
Okay.
I did get some comments from him, so I'll call the meeting to order anyway at 4:34. So let's get to the discussion about the matrix. I was just opening just in the so matrix, Catherine, we had matrix A and then we had matrix evaluation. The one that says matrix evaluation is the correct one.
I think so. Yeah.
It was dated like November 16th.
That sounds right. Let me just,
It looks like the right one to me anyway.
it should say SBC LASC matrix evaluation. Yeah. 11/16.
Yes. That is the one. All right. I'm gonna, if I can do my screen. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing a screen share now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the key to us making this useful or the most useful is figuring out how to score it and then the weight on some of the scoring. So I had a conversation with Gary since he couldn't come.
Yeah.
He was kind of bringing up the same thing. So one of the things here is that if you look how these criteria are worded, we should make sure that whatever scoring method we use addresses the fact that some may be positive versus negative answers. You know, so like example, line 12 says critical habitats. Well, the answer that is better for a particular piece of land would be no critical habitats. That's
Correct.
better for the property.
Right.
But then there might be something else that the no, you know, the no could be a negative or a positive depending how this stuff is written.
Right.
We'd want to make sure everything, if we were going to answer with yes, no's, we would want to make sure everything was worded either all positive or all negative so that the no's and yeses would correlate. Or if we were going to use numerical, some sort of a numerical scoring, we would want to make sure again that everything was understood. So if the property had, for example, line 16 hazardous waste, if that, we obviously think of that as bad. And so we would want to agree that the scoring, if the scoring was a 1, 2, 3 or a low, medium, high, we want to make sure that that's consistent through. So low score because it has hazardous waste doesn't mean as it has a low amount of hazardous waste.
Right.
Clear. And then we would have to have some weighting only for the example that some items here are absolute contraindications. So just as an example, if a piece of land was landlocked, that's an absolute that we're not going to chase that piece of property, or it puts it far down the list that probably not be considering it.
Yeah, Mike, I don't know if I see that on here. Did we put that on here somewhere? Because maybe
I don't think that's on here. I'm just saying, you know, like for example, there is a piece of town-owned land on Jared Sparks Road.
Right.
But it has someone else's property in between it and the road.
Correct. But yeah, I guess I don't know if we should just automatically not consider it just because it's landlocked, because what if an owner wants to sell a piece of it so that we can get access to the road? So
well, so maybe it's not an absolute, but then in which case it would have to be scored pretty far down the list though.
Yeah.
Because we have to decide where we're going to spend our resources.
Exactly. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
There's three things I can see us
What's that,
eliminating,
Ralph?
there's three things we can eliminate off this criteria anyway.
Okay,
9, 10, and 11. Excuse me. 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah,
so
Hurricane.
we could either just take them right out of it because they're irrelevant, or we could just automatically enter not applicable to every one of those.
Yeah, I think we should keep them on there, but I would put NA. If they're not applicable, then we just put NA across the board.
So just for the sake of conversation, I'll do some
Yeah.
work on the screen.
Yeah. You know, the soil types might also be a, you know, one of those indicators that if we're looking at soils in a certain area of Wellington that are all sand, that's probably, it's one, highly unlikely, but two, that's another one that we can cross off the list too, because I think it might be too intense.
No,
to-
soil types going to be relevant because we're going to have to deal with septic.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying as far as what we could, as far as us trying to determine what we're gonna further investigate versus not. You know what I mean? Like Mike was just saying about the landlocked properties. He said we could just cross those off the list, but anyway, it was just a comment.
Okay, like a 500-year floodplain is probably, well, I wouldn't kick that out yet.
Yeah, we have to go through the motions of that. That's just part of the design requirements. So Mike,
There's a whole another list of items that Mike hasn't included here that was in the manual.
So what is that stuff, Ralph? And it's not included further down here either?
If you go to, let me find it. The sidebar on page 1 of section 4000.
yeah, I thought I added that in here. Right here, 2500, chapter 4.
That's-
SBC. Oh,
Section-
4000.
Section 4000, site selection and design, page 1.
Okay, hang on. So whoops. Oh, it's not in here. Okay. All right, I don't have that document open right now.
Yeah, I can pull it up, Mike. I know what he's
Okay.
talking about.
I have it here if you all want to see it.
All right, so I'm gonna stop my screen share for a minute and I'll open it up so you guys can screen share. All right, so either of you should be able to screen share.
You want to do it, Catherine, or you want me to pull it up?
Sure. Is this what you're talking about?
Yes. There's some overlap there with the ones that with the ones that are on the matrix.
Yeah.
Soil
Yeah, like-
types, soil characteristics, same thing.
Yeah. There, I don't know if I've got easements and rights of way. I don't know if I put that on there. There is some overlap, definitely.
Right.
So, I mean, we can just update this matrix. But
Right. And I
Mike-
would say like the term aesthetic considerations just past halfway down. I would
yeah,
say that should not be a checkoff box necessarily. That might be down in our sort of free form area where we're talking about other attributes of the property that might be
Agreed.
valuable to us, but are not actual hard criteria.
right.
Even
Yeah.
things like wetlands, that's not necessarily a bad attribute if the site is large enough.
Sure.
Right, exactly.
So that's a hard one to score.
Yeah. So,
Right. So maybe the wording has to be wetlands that affect access or constructability or something to that effect.
yeah, that makes sense. Mike, maybe, do you want me to go back into the spreadsheet and add these, or do you want to do that? Because it looks like the
Um,
last version you had, looks like
I-
you added a tab to it.
I added a tab on the bottom for the land, for the pieces of land that we would, hang on, let me bring it back up now. So the third tab, unsuitable parcels. So that way, anything that was on this front page, if we scored it low enough or decided it really was unsuitable, we would just move it to that back tab. So it's
I
still
see.
the overall document. So I'm
Okay.
just adding that page as a placeholder for the unsuitables.
I see. So when I see that word unsuitable, I think of soils. I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
Well, that was
Yeah.
language that came out of the last meeting, but we can put
Yeah.
whatever. We can put rejected parcels or lower priority parcels, or we can call it whatever name we want to.
Okay, I don't know what the right word is. Maybe Ralph's got an idea, but
Inappropriate?
no. And I don't want to say rejected either. Well,
Right,
let's
I would just-
table that for now. I did speak with someone from BSC that he offered to review this with us. I told him I would invite him to one of our meetings. But I want to talk to you guys about it first. And he was willing to share with us his comments and how we can go about evaluating the property, evaluating the scoring. He
Yeah.
had some ideas. So if you want, before we end this meeting, we can set up our next meeting and I can invite him to join us. Because I think that would be helpful to get some of his input as to how they've scored land, different sites in the past,
Right, yeah.
on his previous projects. And he's a professional in the industry. You may have heard of BSC Group, Ralph, but
Who?
it's called BSC Group.
No,
They,
I haven't.
they do like site civil selection. And I've worked with him before. And he, like I said, he volunteered his time and was willing to give us some professional feedback on how we can navigate scoring and how we can navigate the whole site evaluation process.
So back to the previous question, Catherine, about editing this. I have almost a completely clear day on my schedule tomorrow. So I would be happy to, whatever we, talk about tonight, I'd be happy to take that on right away tomorrow.
Yeah, I thought I added it. You know what? It looks like it's here.
Additional factors, 24 down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already there, Mike.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I added it. I just, so much going on. Aesthetic
Right.
considerations.
Yeah, it is all
vehicle,
here,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ralph,
Okay.
you might have sent me an email before, and maybe I added it before I sent it to Mike. But can we jump to like the part, like, is there a way, Mike, that we can look at our the town-owned properties? Can we go to the next item 3, discussion of town-owned properties?
Because you're done with this, or you want to like use that as part of this discussion?
Yeah, no, I unless you're done, unless we have more to talk about on the matrix.
No, I'm happy to clean up the matrix as far as making sure everything's worded positive or negative tomorrow. And then we
Yeah, I
can,
don't think you need to change anything yet.
well, we have to get, at some point, we've got to get to so we can use this thing, right? Right, like our goal is to get this as close to usable ASAP, so we can start getting back out and evaluating property. Like if we can go, if we can go start like next week, walking the town-owned property and test this matrix, that would be great. Just before we get into cold, hard winter.
So what would you change on it? Like, what would you change? Because I think it's gonna, before we start like scoring anything, I think that's gonna take a little more time.
Well, you can't score, like, so the example, line 25 is topography. That's not a
Right.
positive or a negative. Right, so it needs some.
Right, exactly. It is what
It
it
needs
is.
some
It
wording
just-
to indicate, are we, what is the question? Okay, yep, it's got topography.
I think we
Everything-
need Mike, I think we need a general title of site development criteria. Topography comes into play, soils come into play, wetlands comes into play.
Right.
All of those things can be pluses or minuses.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, is we have to determine how to clarify them so that we can score, so we can create a scoring, unless, otherwise we would have to manually review every parcel and say, oh, well, this is a good and this is a bad every time we look at the sheet. What we really want the sheet to do is create a score for every parcel, so that we
Understand?
have a sorting tool. Right, so topography, we need somehow to define what we are looking for.
Oh, if they can build loves, we can build a school anywhere.
Yeah, I guess I know it sounds like we're trying to turn this matrix into a score sheet. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying, Mike?
Yes. And not every section will able to be scoreable. Like there's free form, like we can put comments about the property, but as far as these attributes that are in the form, if we have one piece of property that only does well in 3 attributes, and a piece of property does well in 5, and 10 pieces
Yeah.
that do well in 10, we don't want to
Well-
have to look through every one of them individually every time. We want to see the score at the bottom.
Right. So I guess I envision the score sheet as a separate document. Site evaluation, these are the criteria that we have to go through for the grant application. So I think what we do here with the site evaluation, the parcel details, we just document. And then as far as the score sheet goes, we can score it however we want. We don't have to follow this format, right? So I
But what
think
you're
when
saying
we-
is you're talking about using this as a checklist of did we
as a
do-
database, really as a database of all the work that we're about to do. And it's not, it may not be a plus or minus or a check sheet. It's going to be like soil types here. Parcel 1, the answer to that one may be sandy in spots and, type A or whatever it is. It's just going to be a collection of data. Soil
Okay, so I see what
contamination,
you're
yes or
saying
no.
is it's your review, your overall review of each piece.
Exactly, because this is what we're
problem-
required to do.
The problem is this conversation started off with, how do we make sure we go to each property and if we walk a property and look at the town records, how do we make an assessment that we can look back at and say, yeah, we walked that property and we've eliminated it, or we made it a low priority. So the conversation started off as exactly this, as some sort of a score sheet or a matrix, so that we can say, we've looked at all these, we can tell the townspeople, we like this lot or this lot or this lot, and here are the reasons why. So we have a defendable, whatever recommendation we make, even if the
Yeah.
recommendation is don't do anything, we can have a sheet that shows why we made that recommendation. We
Right.
looked at 27 pieces of property, and here's what the answers were.
Yeah. Well, and let me give you an example, like the floodplains 100-year, floodplains 500-year. Those items are on there because depending on the site, somebody will have to do an evaluation for a 100-year floodplain and a 500-year floodplain. We're not going to put that on our score sheet, but what we may put on our score sheet is, does this site meet the minimum requirements for floodplain? And then the answer is going to be, if it says no, then you get a 0 score. It's going to be something like that, but I see the score sheet as a separate entity. Because it's not we're not going to score every single one of these. Right? We just have to come
Right,
up with.
so So
We
then we
gotta
can figure out which of these attributes will be scored.
Correct. And it might just be like, maybe we have a question on the score sheet that says about the soils. We're not going to say, is the soil type good? Is it soil contaminated? We're going to have one question that says, are the soil types advantageous to building a school on it? And so if the answer is no, because it was a previous hazardous site, then the answer is no, and it gets a score of 0. I mean, it's that kind of thinking. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts about that, but
so what you're saying is basically you're envisioning 2 documents. One is the database, one is the score sheet.
correct. And the score sheet will be a template, and it'll be used for every one of these sites.
Right.
We
Yep.
haven't gotten that
Agreed.
far yet. We haven't, and I think BSC can help us with a typical score sheet. In fact, if you want, I can, after this meeting, I can reach out to him and see if he has a template that he can share with us. Because he's done projects like this before where there is a score sheet, but yeah, so I mean, these are just the minimum items that they want us to consider for the grant application. And it's part of the
Right.
due diligence of going through each
Sure.
site.
Yeah, I agree. The only concern I have is the whole reason this conversation started was to create a score sheet. So we're a couple of months into creating the score sheet, and now we're thinking this isn't the score sheet. So
Yeah, I don't know that that's true. I think, we started with steps, Mike, that we knew we had town-owned properties. Now we have to
Right.
say to ourselves, okay, how do we evaluate those town-owned properties? We know we have to look at a bunch of things. Well, how do we know what things we're going to look at? Well, we got to look at minimum requirement things based on the grant application.
right.
If we had all the money in the world, we could look at this land however we want. But because we're relying on state funds, we have to go by their list, which is what is
Right.
listed here in this matrix. And we have to do a checkbox, like you were saying. What is the floodway, the floodplains, the phase 1 site assessment has to be done on every parcel, whatever site we choose. Property law transfer, all of these things have to get looked at as a checklist, and it's either a yes or no, or it's got a data entry like soil types. You just enter the soil type, and so on with the rest of the list. But I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but I never thought that this was going to end up our score sheet. I think the score sheet is just part 2 of this evaluation. And we're not in any position to start scoring. So I don't think we've lost any time here. I think it's
Well,
just,
so everything you're saying makes complete sense. I completely understand what you're saying, but I see it differently. I see it,
Okay.
we don't want to go back to a piece of property later. So we need to get whatever way we're going to document it, we need to get it agreed upon so we can get out there and get walking property. And so what I don't want to do is go to a piece of property, walk it, and then we do some sort of checkbox or whatever, and then we don't document the right information. And we're 3 or 4 properties in, and we're using different criteria on the 4th property because now we've realized we should have scored it. So I think we need to figure out, we need to figure out how we're going to document each piece. That was my goal of getting this. And we've talked about this a lot, to have this sheet done so we can look at property.
I think, just to interject here, Mike, I think we're somewhere between both of you.
yeah,
We need all of the items that we have to consider. When we go and examine a piece of property, we can take notes on every one of these items. We're not going to score it at that point in time, but we are going to make note of what was observed on those properties, what we know about those properties, what we don't know about those properties, because some of this stuff we're not going to know. And by the way, line 16 and 17 are all one, should be all one line.
oh, yeah,
That's one,
okay,
that's one bullet point, not
Yeah.
2.
okay, yeah,
So if we have
I'll make a note to, yep.
if we have
Thank
a a form, if you will, that has all these items listed. And we walk a piece of property. Well, we may not be able to know whether or not we're on a 500-year floodplain. We might be able to determine from a GIS whether it's 100-year. I think we're going to have a very good idea as to whether or not there's a floodway. And we've already hit the coastal things. Wetlands, unfortunately in Connecticut, it's not just by observation, it's by soil types. So it may
Right.
look dry, but it's not. It's still considered a wetland soil. So that's gonna hit us one way or the other. Scrolling down here, some of this stuff in that sidebar really comes into play on the design side.
Yeah.
Yep,
Aesthetic considerations, that's a design thing.
right,
Vehicular circulation, pedestrian circulation, that's a design thing.
Mhm.
Storm system, not so much. Are we going to need a detention retention pond if we are looking at new?
Yeah.
Sanitary sewage, yes, we're going to have to address that because we don't have any
Right.
public utilities. Directional signage, that's a design thing, as are
Mhm.
playscapes, lighting,
Mhm.
landscaping. Those are not key evaluation things looking at a piece of raw land.
Right.
So how about I do this? Tomorrow, I'll take this spreadsheet, I'll pull out the characteristics that I think need the scoring. And send
Okay.
it back out to the subcommittee in email. And
Maybe just, could you create a separate tab, Mike?
yeah, yep,
Maybe create a separate tab, call it draft score sheet or something, and then just copy and paste to each tab. Or you can just copy everything and then just get rid of what.
yeah, I'll create a separate tab for the scoring. And send it back out. And that can be the basis of hopefully the evolution of this into two things.
Yeah.
One is just essentially the checklist and an opportunity to collect the data. The other thing is to extrapolate score out of it.
Okay. And I'll reach out to my contact at BSC and see if he has a sample score sheet.
Yeah.
I think between the two, and that's going to be our tool moving forward. And to Ralph's point about, we can take this list and bring it to us with sites, but I think there's actually some sort of research that we need to do sort of behind the desk and maybe contacting the town, which is get a list of the town-owned properties. I think we saw it briefly in one of our meetings some time ago that Phil showed us. But it'd be nice to see, okay, what do we own? And is there any potential that maybe us can tackle looking at some town-owned property and see if we can start using this matrix in a way, just to kind of get familiar with the matrix and see if we make modifications along the way. But maybe we start that way before we even hit the ground and start walking sites. I mean, especially on the town-owned properties, I think all of us have lived in the town for quite some time. We probably have seen the site already. So
Yep.
there's a little bit of, I think, behind the desk research that I think we could do and divide and conquer with some of the sites. I know, Ralph, you mentioned it was a property that was up by 74 near Ruby Road. I can't remember the name of it. Wooderman or something like that property. Was it a town-owned property out there?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway.
So I believe I have a list. I'll look. I think I have a list of the
Well,
town.
Phil had a list.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Phil
Yeah,
had a
and-
list.
Yeah, and he sent
Yeah,
it to Mike.
I think he may have emailed it to me. I'll check.
Yeah, if you could, I mean, I wouldn't mind just taking a quick look at that and seeing if we can leave this meeting with like a little bit of homework for each of us to kind of see if we can start picking away at, is this a potential? And we may know right off the bat, if it's only a 2-acre site, then no, it's not a potential. But
Right. So I think that in what I imagined anyway, so So Phil in previous committees and himself before this committee started has done that exercise a couple times. So in my mind, what I was thinking is it's the time for us to have, we don't want to invest any more time in evaluation until we have the tool. So anything we learn goes on the tool, goes on the database, the scoring, whatever.
Right,
And that
Yeah.
way no effort is wasted.
exactly.
And so the horse is the tool, the cart is the looking at the pieces, even if it's homework, because the advantage is once the tool is figured out, then we can add, as people are doing that research, like if we have an opportunity tomorrow to walk a property, let's put that, let's go walk it and put the information in there, not actually tomorrow, as an
No,
example.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And then, get that information, even if we don't have the rest of the information, we've documented what we've seen. Then
Yep,
if
that's
next
true.
week, we're gonna look in the land records and determine certain other attributes of that property, it gets
Yep.
added. So.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that makes sense.
So do you feel like we've discussed the matrix enough to move on to the town-owned property thing as an agenda item?
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll create a second sheet for scoring and send it out to the 4 of us, or to the 3 of you. And hang on, I'm just taking notes. Okay, so on to the agenda item for town-owned property. The list is not huge. There are many small pieces of town-owned property that are part of like subdivisions that were, like there are things that are open space. There are some things that are completely town-owned. And a lot of those are easy to eliminate because of where they're located or what is on them. And then there are the pieces that we've talked about before, the Hall School piece, the Center School piece, the Youngerman property on Ruby
that's
Road.
the one I was thinking of.
Right, that's the one out on Ruby Road. Yeah.
Okay.
There's also one on Moose Meadow.
Which property is that one?
It's on the southwest side of Moose Meadow that was part of the original acquisition of Fenton Ruby.
Oh, okay.
That was the only piece that was not restricted. I don't know what the acreage is. I can find that in a heartbeat here.
You're saying there was a separate piece on Moose Meadow Road that's
Yep.
town-owned?
Yep. Let me get there. It is 36 acres.
Oh, wow. Do you happen to have a map, Ralph?
I do. Well, I don't have a map specific to the property, but I have an overall town of Wellington map up here.
You want to screen share that just so we can see what we're talking about?
Sure. Let me get back
And is
to,
that one's town-owned?
okay, it's this piece right here. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
We have George Sparks and we have Moose Meadow. This is town of Wellington. If you go into the deed, I think you'll find there's no restrictions on it. Whereas Fenton Ruby Park on the other side does have restrictions.
So it's that block where your arrow is right now?
Right there, right there.
Oh, wow.
And was this just recently or have we owned this
This
for a
has
while?
been around for a long time.
You know what? I wonder if it's designated as an open space. But we can ask.
I don't believe, well, the
It would
Conservation
say it on the
Commission,
would it say it on the property card?
probably not. But Conservation Commission could,
It shows as vacant land.
so it's currently hayfields or a portion of it's
R80.
hayfields. It's already, well, everything in town is already, unless it's otherwise.
Right.
That's how we do things here. Default is already. But I know it's not part of the park, so,
Okay.
let me get back to. Are you seeing the, property
Well, I'm
card?
seeing, we see the property card, yep.
Okay, all right, hold on. Let me figure out how to,
Yeah, one tab to the left is the parcel map.
yeah, well, yeah, I
Just
got,
close, just
I got
close
a
that
man,
box.
I got a menu here from Zoom that's hiding.
Oh, go Alt Tab. Click Alt Tab on your. And then it should pop up these screens, and then you just let go. You keep hitting tab until you get to the screen that you want. And then let go of the tab once you get the screen that you want.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that screen now. Well, we'll do it this way. It's a brute force method. I'm sorry.
There you go.
And if I go back to screen share,
Yeah, so I wondered that would actually,
here we go.
I mean, that could be like, one of us can look into the details of that, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, that would just be a phone call to someone on that conservation commission. They would know.
Yeah, so I figure
Oh, we-
it's easy enough to just, to get the town list and just ask the question, you know, either in the land use office or, you know, whatever group, and just say, okay, here's the list. You know, here's, you know, property, whatever, 36A, what are the restrictions? Here's property 22B, what are the restrictions? And do that background. You could do all the town-owned lots in one shot.
Oh, GIS, I mean, Mike, is it Mike?
D'Amato.
D'Amato could do a search in the GIS for, and just put in their parcel criteria that we're looking for.
Yep. Yes, that's how the previous list was done by Phil.
Catherine, you were going to request a clarification on the minimum acreage. Did you get a response from DAS?
good question. I don't remember seeing one, but,
I saw the request you sent out, you know, you had sent it to us to see that you had sent it.
yeah. Just give me a second. I'll check my email.
Another question that may come up, particularly as we get down closer to the end here, with the phase 1 environmental site assessment.
Yeah.
Would they push that onto an existing site with an existing school that's been a school for 100 years?
I don't know about the 100-year, but my impression from what I've read is that it's required no matter what. Whether it's an existing building.
But is it a waivable requirement?
Good question. I don't know. I don't
I
see
think it's worth
anything.
asking. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay.
I have not, but you know, it was Thanksgiving. It was just before Thanksgiving. So
I understand.
yeah, it doesn't look like, I'm checking my emails now. It doesn't look like I got anything regarding that. Yeah. But when I do, that's actually a good point. I can always send them another email and just say, just double checking.
I don't think you copied me on that. I don't have anything.
No, I just copied Mike as the chair of this committee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a while back too, so it would have been nice if they had answered by now.
Well, it's the state of Connecticut. You want to answer right away?
Yes, I should know better.
You gotta be the squeaky wheel.
Hmm.
I
Okay,
can resend it. I'll resend it, clarification on acreage.
okay. So, I'm just noting. Okay, so more discussion on the town-owned property. I talked to Erica a little bit as far as access on the town-owned properties. You know, essentially it's public land. It just, I just, you know, wanted to check and make sure that there, you know, we were considering anything that needed to be considered on going on those properties. And she said that, you know, to some extent, it's essentially, you know, free reign, but it wouldn't hurt to just, you know, make some kind of contact so that, you know, she was aware in case townspeople called and said they saw people walking on a property or something. And certainly the schools, if we're going to be on those properties during any time when school is in session, we would have to get that cleared with Phil, just purely for notification and safety reasons, you know, situational awareness, if you will.
I think it would be best to try and do the two school properties on a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday.
Yeah, and I
That
think
way there's no suspicion of any, or
Right.
at least minimal suspicion that there's some creep
Tom's.
lurking
Right.
around the school when the kids are there.
right,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, we start, you know, we take one like, say, Center School, where the property is pretty easy to walk around and see the whole thing.
Yeah.
And understand the borders, and we do something like that as one of the first ones we do. And
Yeah.
test our documentation, you know, and
Yeah.
make sure that we feel comfortable with how we're scoring. Forget the word scoring. That we're comfortable with how we're documenting what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And that way we don't get in over our heads on a big, like, we don't want to be trashing around in the woods on the Youngerman property and discover that the way we're evaluating it is not functional.
Exactly.
Or we're not even on the Youngerman property.
Or we're not on the Youngerman property, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah. I hope you guys have a compass or something.
So what I will do is I will get the list. Like I said, I think I have the list already. I will get the list out to this subcommittee. Maybe what I'll do is I'll contact Mike D'Amato and just ask for an update. Make sure that we have the latest information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like, Ralph, how did you find out about that particular one? Do you know? Do you know something about?
He's a knowledgeable dude.
Exactly.
Well, what else
No,
do you know? Since we don't have that.
I have access to almost all of the assessor's GIS in the state of Connecticut. It's public. Anyone can get to it. You just have to know how.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to teach us, or do you want to show us another?
I know how to do it. I've done it.
I do it because of my work with foundation investigations.
Yeah.
I check out every property before I go out there, so I have some idea what I'm going to find. Because it's not just a case of looking at the foundation, it's also a case of looking at the property and the surrounding terrain, because that impacts.
Absolutely.
So I do my homework before I go out. Looking at concrete walls is boring.
So what else did you find? Did you find any other one that's appetizing?
I have a list.
I wonder if it matches the list that Phil sent you, Mike.
Yeah, I would.
We don't need to get too deep in that in a public meeting.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious about like that Moose Meadow Road. Is it worth trying our matrix on that one as a sample?
Well, I think again, it would be better to start with something like center school because the borders are very obvious.
Yeah,
You know, you have roads on two sides of the property, so you can access it easily from public. You're not risking being on other people's property. Parking is easy, you know, all that kind of stuff.
And if you miss something, it's easy to go back to.
Right,
yeah, that's true.
You know, if you get back and look at your notes and realize, well, we didn't look at that aspect.
yeah, it's easier for one of us to get that information or, you know, yep.
I mean, Mike and I probably know that property well enough to do this without even going out there.
Yeah.
Reasonably well, yep. Okay, so, is that enough discussion on the town-owned parcels right now?
Yeah, if, I think the
If we don't
outcome
have
of
the
that,
list, then
I'll
yes.
get the list out to people. Ralph, you can see if it matches what you have.
Okay,
And, then I'll get the modified assessment tool out to people. And, you know, we can't have discussion in email, but each member can feed back to me directly
Yeah.
and say, this is what I see, or this is what I don't like, or whatever. We can, as long as it's not back and forth discussion, we're not conducting business, you can respond back to me individually. And then we can be ready either for the next full meeting or call the next subcommittee meeting. And maybe we call the next subcommittee meeting at a location. And, you know, maybe that meeting, if we feel we're close enough on the scoring evaluation matrix, we meet at center school for our next meeting.
Sure.
And just get after it.
now I think we can email everyone on the subcommittee as a
Yep.
one-way email.
Right.
As far as any back and forth, no, we're not going to get into a debate between two members of the
Right.
subcommittee.
Right.
We're going to feed information to everybody. Mike gets a copy as chair. And if there's a response necessary to any one of those emails, it should be coming from Mike. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
Right, and an
the
individual
meeting.
member can respond just to me, so I'll send it out as a BCC. So you won't even have the option to reply all. That will
I don't do
keep,
that. I don't do that anyway. That's
Delete.
dangerous.
that will keep us from accidentally ending up with discussion in email.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
how
did one.
finance.
I put my foot in my mouth once with a reply all email. I'll never do it again.
I changed how we do Board of Finance emails a while back. It's all BCC now because it was just too easy to end up in conversations with the whole board on an email, which is an illegal meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any need to call an executive session. I had just put it in the agenda in case we had a discussion that took us to a particular piece of private property and that we
Yeah.
felt the need. So I
Yeah.
don't see a need for an executive session.
So Mike, are we gonna follow this format? Like these agenda items will be at every meeting essentially? Because I mean, I think this is a good start for the next meeting. Just, you know.
It may
discuss the
vary
matrix.
one or two items depending what
Yeah.
that needs.
Yeah, no, I like it. It looks good. And then the only thing I would say, if we're gonna adjourn, maybe set up our next meeting.
Sure.
Can we
Abs-
do something in a couple weeks, hoping that I get some feedback from BSC and hopefully get some clarification from the state on the acreage?
Mhm. So what is our next meeting? I think is what, the 18th or something like that? Or
15.
15.
15th, right, 2 weeks from today.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we'd probably want to meet previous to that meeting, right? So we could bring all the updates to the full meeting.
So I mean, I could do it the 14th.
Let me get to my calendar here.
That's the Tuesday
Alright.
before.
I might have maxed my brain out.
That's out for me.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
do Monday?
me too. Let's
I gotta do
see.
Monday, the 13th.
I think I can do Monday. Hang on. Yeah, I can do Monday, the 13th.
Okay. And do that late in the day, after dark, I hope.
What time?
My preference for meetings, after dark,
Yep,
unless we're on site.
right.
4:30
what's
is
the
fine with
time?
me. If
What's
that works
that?
with you. 4:30. I usually leave, actually, I'm home on Tuesdays, so. I mean, I could do 4:30 or 4
Well, that's a
o'clock.
Monday, right? The
We're
13th?
talking
Oh,
Monday the
Monday,
13th.
sorry. Yeah, I'm home on Mondays too, but what works for you, Mike?
I'll fit it in wherever. You know, I can feed the kids early, feed the kids late, whatever. Feed them nothing.
What do you think, Ralph? 4:30?
It's fine with me.
Okay. 4:30 it is.
Okay.
And if we're
Just-
doing a Zoom meeting, yeah, that's fine. I'm
Yeah.
not, you know, we could do it at 10 o'clock, but I don't think you guys would be up.
Okay, great. So I'll get those things out to you. So I'll do some modifications on the matrix and send it out to the subcommittee. I will, Catherine, you're going to resend your email, re the acreage to the state.
Yeah.
And I will send the list of town-owned parcels out to the subcommittee. And we will hopefully have a workable sheet, even if it's not perfect, a workable tool for our next meeting.
Yeah,
Well,
and
we
you
want to
mind
give
if
it a
I-
test run, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think your idea
you-
with center school is perfect.
Yeah. Do
Okay,
you mind if I invite BSC to join us at our next subcommittee meeting?
I think
You can
any
put that on
guidance
the-
we can get is great, as long as we're making sure that we don't, you know, that we don't put someone in a jackpot that they can't bid on something.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than the whole Colliers where they showed
Yep.
up and
Mhm.
gave us some information. Yeah, so
Okay,
no, he was, it would be more informational tips, similar to what Colliers did at the regular building
Yeah.
committee.
okay. And then totally random, just because I was at a CCM conference yesterday, talking with various different vendors at the trade show. The new solar programs in Connecticut are favoring farmland reuse and municipal properties. And so there are incentives, funding incentives and program incentives for solar projects that go on public land, public roofs, stuff like that. You know, so that's a positive that we may have an opportunity to get some solar. They said either on the roof of a new school or even as a separate solar farm on a property if you have acreage.
Interesting.
So again, we're too early to be worried about it, but it's just a positive sign that the incentives and the support is going in that direction.
Okay.
How about anything with geothermal, Mike? Or wasn't that a
There's
topic?
talk, but there's no movement yet in any legislation or in the industry to provide incentives. But at least I think I remember someone we talked to early on said, and actually it was even in one of the criteria was interest in alternative energy, right? Excuse me.
I think we would be foolish if we didn't consider it, period.
I agree.
Whether it's existing or whether it's new. No matter what we do, there's going to be a substantial amount of site work, more for a new school
Right.
than an existing, but there's still going to be a lot of site work. So the opportunities there to bring in the kind of equipment that would help us would facilitate
Right.
geothermal as well.
Right, absolutely, especially since it's open a lot of acreage. You would have the option of doing well type or trench type.
Correct.
Yeah,
And if you combine that with solar, you use the solar to run the pumps for the geo.
yeah, I agree. Yep. Okay, so we've completed our agenda items other than adjournment.
Can you did you add that one to the agenda for next time, the BSC? Or do you want to do, what do you call it? like
Was
speaking.
it present to speak?
Present to speak, thank you.
We should
You
do
can
that
either-
anyway, perhaps.
Yeah,
Okay,
And
I've got to add present to speak to agenda.
okay, awesome.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'll send out some minutes from this meeting.
Okay. So
Okay.
we'll meet December 13th, 4:30.
You got it.
All right, thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Okay. Bye.